Good afternoon, classmates. Turn it on. I was told it was on. I also said I don't need it, but they're videotaping this, so they're insisting that I use it. It is my pleasure this afternoon to introduce an old friend, Emery R. Austin, an International Hall of Fame speaker. She is like a motivational speaker. I haven't heard it a lot, but I enjoyed it every time. And I promise that you will enjoy it yourself. You'll think about your life, your successes, and some failures. But Emery is fun, insightful, etc. Somebody else wrote this, but it looks pretty nice, so I'm gonna say this about Emery. She has confidence that is not arrogance, love of knowledge that is not snobbery. She tells moving stories that are not sentimental. She is vibrant without jumping around, and she is personal without being confessional. You will enjoy it. Now, for this unique class of 1959, why are we unique? We are the last people to attend school at the original campus. Emery and I go back even before that. We lived in the old town, and we're both faculty brats. If I can elevate my father, the basketball coach, to a professor of the classic language, Greek and Latin. But I promise you, you will enjoy Emery Austin Hart.
It matters not.
Yes.
Oh, got all the names.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Welcome home again. Home is where the heart is. And that's where our hearts are right now, and that's exactly where we are. Now, somewhere here, I had a picture.
It's right behind
Behind you now.
I can put this right up here.
Just hold it up. Thank you. What is this? Yes,
It's a
Nancy.
flock of geese.
Anybody else? Huh?
That's me in the back.
I thought it looked familiar. Anybody else have an idea of what that is?
It's a painting.
Exactly. That is not a flock of geese. That is only a painting of a flock of geese. That's all it is. And when I was thinking about my time as a graduate of this great university, look, folks, we are too old to be anything less than authentic. This is not an authentic group of geese. And sometimes in our lives, we have a way of mixing up what's authentic with what is merely a picture. Authenticity is what we gain after 60 years away from this great university. I brought with me a symbol of authenticity. If anything was ever authentic, it is this. So I was trying to think, as remembering who was the Demon Deacon. Okay, and he would come out. Remember that? Totally authentic. And then I was thinking, so how can I use this as a symbol? Well, we are unstoppable. And we have, in our own ways, plunged into many places and made a difference. What did you gain from Wake Forest? As Murray said, we grew up as children, knowing where everything on the campus was, knowing where Everett Snyder's bookstore was, knowing where the chapel was, where the old church was. And from the time I could walk, my mother took me up on the campus at graduation time. and I watched those professors, I'm sure you did the same thing, in their regalia, in their robes, and in their capes, walk across the campus, I cannot, to this day, hear pomp and circumstance without tearing up, because it brings back my entire history. You all were sent a questionnaire. I don't know what any of the questions were, but I'd like to do this. Whichever question you liked the best, I want to give everybody in here a minute to say what their answer was. 1 minute. I'm sorry? Oh, I'm just going to let everybody decide. What question did you like or did you answer? Okay.
Actually, I was not on that campus those 2 years I was at Mars Hill, but I was on the campus as a
Well,
student.
you've made up for it, haven't you? Yes, you have. You've made
My
up
father
for it.
was there.
Any particular memory or any particular thing that strikes you as something you took away and plunged yourself into authentically? Jack, come on.
Well, I had 2 jobs going, and the doctor on campus said, "I've known other fools like you. Straighten it out, decide which one you're going to do."
What were the two?
I was pastoring a church and full-time student.
Well, you know what? That wasn't a bad thing, was it?
What was his name?
Mackey, Dr. Mackey.
George Mackey.
George Mackey, campus physician.
He would make house calls in the middle of the night, and if he needed to, he'd go wake up Tom Holden in the drugstore to fill a prescription in the middle of the night. Murray.
What a great place to grow up. You've mentioned a lot of positive aspects of it, and that's what I think about. But I learned to love dear old Wake Forest all at the same time, meaning the college. The athletics, of course, meant a lot to me, and the spirit was very strong in those days. But while I'm talking about history, let me take a little extra few seconds to put in a spot advertisement for the Wake Forest College Birthplace Society and the Wake Forest College Museum. It has developed into a marvelous institution that is beautiful in every respect. For those of you who have not been there and are not interested in it, please go, because you will want to experience it. It's great.
There are robes from the professors. I've got the tablecloth that some of you signed. That some of you signed at my parents' home on Sundays. And that tablecloth will be in that museum, not on the new campus.
I didn't go to Wake Forest.
Okay?
I just want to say, Ed, that was worth $5, not a quarter.
I work for Wake Forest, a quarter's all I can afford.
Anything you want to say?
Just very happy that I was able to attend Wake Forest. And I remember one thing from the old campus. Gentleman, professor who taught physics, Dr. Bill Speeds. Did anyone
Oh,
have
goodness,
Bill
yes.
Speeds? Well, he was known to have a memory that didn't always work right. And the story goes is that one day he drove his car down to Raleigh, which was a common thing, and he caught the bus back home. And his wife says, "Bill, where's the car?" He says, "I don't know, you must have it." They tell him they eventually found it after a period of time. But in another aspect of Dr. Spees, he was a wonderful guy. I had him for physics. And a dear friend of mine, classmate, Wally Snipes, and I played a little bit of joke on him one time. We knew his routine. He would come in to give his lecture, and he always would lift up the sparkler thing and want to light up the Bunsen burner. I don't know what got into us, but we went down and switched the hose from the gas to the air.
Oh, God.
Well, he tried it, and he had a habit of talking to himself. After 4 or 5 times, he mumbled and he changed that tube to the right one and got the Bunsen burner going. Later in a meeting with him, I needed a great elevation in the worst sort of way, and I was right on the borderline. And his kindness is beyond belief. Was beyond belief.
Another story about Bill Speaks. Back in the day, when there were no co-eds on the campus, it was just male students, and they finally invented a co-ed, and as you said, he had the habit of talking under his breath. Well, he sent this co-ed to the board to answer some sort of a physics question, and she mumbled and stumbled, and he said, "That's all right, honey, but I can't help it if you are a damn fool." Okay, let's start it back there with the next graduate.
I remember biology teacher Britt, Dr. Britt.
Yeah.
Dr. Alan Easley, and first of all, David Smiley. And what a rude awakening it was to go into classes with those three, because I came out of a very small high school. There was nothing like a Dr. Britt.
Right.
And Dr. McFeeters for French.
Mary Frances.
Mary Frances McFeeters, who married
Paul Robinson.
Paul Robinson later.
Robinson. That's right, that's right. Didn't Dr. Smiley start his history classes off by going over to the light switch and saying, "Let there be light"?
And take out a piece of paper and answer the following 10 questions.
Yeah.
Pop
quizzes.
Pop quizzes.
Pop quizzes, that's right. Pass it on down, please.
On behalf of all of us who transferred to Wake Forest from junior colleges in the fall of '57, I want to thank you for taking us in and letting us be part of this great class. But having transferred in from a junior college in the fall of '57, we were required to attend orientation. As a result of that, it got our Wake Forest experience off to a great start because we attended the first dance ever held on the campus of Wake Forest University, and that involved the Baptist State Convention of coming in all year long during '57 and '58.
Oh, wow.
Well, in 1957, there was a bonfire. You remember that?
Well, the second dance we held after we were banned from having another dance on campus was out at Thruway Shopping Center, which many
I
of
remember
you
that.
may have participated in.
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, one more dance before we leave dancing. Before the dance at Thruway, a group of us waited after the band, waited until the preacher got up to preach on the religious day of required chapel, got up, walked out, walked down to Renola Hall, got to convince the guy at the snack shop to move the jukebox out on the patio. And we spent the next several hours dancing on the patio instead of going to class. And Life magazine got wind up.
that story. Smarty.
But we wound up with a picture of the whole mass of us on the cover of Life magazine.
Oh, yeah.
So we had a lot of fun dancing even though it was illegal.
As I recall too, the girls wore black that day with a scarlet D.
I was going to
No kidding. I remember that. Well, I'm going to turn it over. Here's a quick story about my father. When we just had admitted co-eds, and one of them who'd never been away from her hometown went to the bank with a check from her parents for $25 and handed it to the teller and said, "Just give me a $25 bill." And the teller said, there's no such thing as a $25 bill. And she said, "Okay, how about a 10 and a 15? and the teller said, "There's no such thing as a $15 bill." Whereupon my dad, who was in line, stepped out and said, "Oh, for heaven's sakes, make it easy for her. Give her 3 7s and a 4. Where's Mike? Nancy.
I have the mic. I'm Nancy Hughes, writer. I used to be Nancy Hughes Gear,
Now, I'm Nancy Hughes Ryder. I've had lots of names in my lifetime. I won't tell you some of them. This seems to be a funny thing, so I'm OCD, undiagnosed, self-diagnosed OCD. So I answered all the questions and put them on the computer. But I'll take some of the serious ones. What do you remember about coming to the original campus? And I've written it down, so I'm going to read it. It'll take less time. I remember having mixed feelings about entering Wake Forest. My sister and I were 18 months apart in age, and she had finished her first year at Wake. I had been accepted by the skin of my teeth, at first being placed on a waiting list and nervously awaiting being accepted, which only took a few days, but it was a very nervous few days for me. So I was relieved and grateful for having made it, but feeling a little bit on tenterhooks. At first, I met my new roommate, Judy Freeman. A little later, I was introduced to my house mother and the Dean of Women. One of them said that they hoped that I would be better behaved than my sister. I thought my sister was a stellar human being and pretty close to perfection personified, so I immediately felt that their taste in young ladies was up to question, at the least. To clarify, my sister had gone out on a date with a young man, a very nice young man, and they had the misfortune of having a flat tire. So it took a while to fix it, so when she got back, she was late for curfew, and so she was campused. I tried to put campus on the computer and it just didn't look right. So I put CAMPUS-ED instead of CAMPUSSED. I'm very careful about spelling words.
Well, that's OCD for you.
Yeah, right. But it seemed unfair to me since she had done nothing bad, and this situation was completely out of her control. So you could say I had a shaky beginning, but I remember loving the campus and its beautiful ivy-covered buildings and the majestic magnolias. Orientation was a blur, but I remember friendliness as well as the helpfulness of everyone. And I like to piggyback on what everybody said about David Smiley. He was my history professor, and he was wonderful, and he was also very funny. But he taught me to think. He taught me to think inductively and deductively, and I'm very grateful for that experience.
Is that not what an education is all about? The ability to think. And there was something about, the new campus is fine, but it's new. There was something about the old campus in which I just sort of wanted to blow some of the dust off of those buildings and go inside and take in the smell of ages of speakers, of professors, of students who walked through there and for whom it made a huge difference. As you said, the ivy growing up the walls, the beautiful, gorgeous magnolias that I understand, the seminary cut down the lower branches because Wake Forest students were known to have used those as trysting places.
They took the benches out from under them too.
Well, you know, that makes sense in a way, if that's the way they think. But I was thinking, what did Wake Forest say to me? What did those professors? Ed Wilson. I don't know if any of you all ever had work under Claude Roebuck, but he was phenomenal. So many of them were. What they essentially said to me was, take up your bed and walk. Walk into your future. Throw out your own magic seeds. Build your own beanstalks and understand what real gold and real treasures are all about. I do a lot of programs about nursery rhymes and fairy tales, and I ask people what their favorite story was. And one woman in an audience said, Rapunzel. And I said, why? She said, Rapunzel is the only fairy tale in which the damsel participates in her own rescue. The women who went to Wake Forest, as well as the men, grew into places of renown for themselves, for their families, and for whatever they did, because they were taking part in something unusual in that era for women. It grew us both. It gave us roots and it gave us wings. And I was trying to think, how many of y'all took romantic poets with Ed Wilson? I know there was Byron and Wordsworth and Keats and Shelley, and I think there was another one. Who was it? Was it Coleridge? Or I think there were 5 of them, but I can't remember who the 5th one was.
Was it T.S. Eliot?
No. But there is something about the ability to read poetry well. Things can be said in poetry that cannot be said in prose. To be able to read between the lines and to see significant meaning in phrases that you would not typically put together. What a gift he gave all of us, and so did so many others who taught us about the richness of words and vocabulary and caring and reading and pondering and thinking and moving in directions from which we sowed our own magical seeds and grew our own stalks upward. Who's got the microphone? Francis?
I'm going to pass for the moment.
For the moment.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm not going to give it up.
I got here late, so I don't know what the instructions are, but I'm going to talk about 2 things.
Okay.
The thing that impressed me, one of the things that impressed me and got my attention more than anything else, was the night that President Tribble was burned in effigy. I never heard or thought about anything like that. That was beyond my thinking and experience.
Why was he burned in effigy?
That's in
They thought
1957.
that,
The athletic department,
Yeah.
one by one.
Ooh, that sounds familiar.
Well, he was gonna fire the last one, that's when they got real upset. The last one being my father.
He never fired your father.
Now you know who had the
Your father,
No, he didn't fire him.
good.
But the rumor was that, that he was, he wouldn't give, this is too good, y'all have probably heard all this, but, you know, P-Head, one of the winningest football coaches in the world right then, went to Dr. Tribble and asked for a raise. After a couple of 7-win seasons, oh no, Coach, I can't give you a raise. I couldn't give the faculty a raise, and they kept negotiating. And finally, Dr. Tribble said, "Well, tell you what, Coach, I got a little fund here that's just mine." And he said, "If you'll agree to stay around, I can pay you, but you have to keep this secret. I can pay you $50 a month out of this fund." And P-Head said, "Don't worry, Dr. Tribble, I wouldn't tell anybody. I'd be just as ashamed of it as you are." And then not one more than all this, but I was on the freshman basketball team, never played much, but I would, and Harold Barrow would have us in to practice between 6:30 and 7 o'clock every night. And by about 8:30, we'd be done, because the varsity had an afternoon. The night of that burning in effigy, Harold Barrow kept us in the gym till about 10:30, so we could not go participate.
Here's a story about P-Head. P-Head Walker sent to the downtown cleaner, sent a suit, and when he got it back, it was shrunk so much he could hardly wear it. And he complained to Jim Weaver. Do y'all remember Jim Weaver? Okay, he complained to Jim Weaver, whereupon Jim sent a belt and his alarm clock to the same cleaners and said, "I need a wristwatch. Can you do something?"
I want to add that, I just want to add that there is a book written on P-Head Walker, published about 3-4 years ago. And it tells most of all the stories. It's very good.
Didn't he take a bunch of athletes that he wanted to recruit to Duke and tell them that was the North Campus of what?
Bill George.
Bill George. Okay.
And that was, yeah.
He's still the winningest coach at Wake Forest.
Really?
Who P had?
He was black.
That's what, yeah, Murray said. You haven't said anything, Barbara.
Oh, I was gonna tell the Peahead Walker story about the Duke campus and everything.
Okay.
But, you say a couple other things since I have the mic. I got here late. One of the things I thought was most wonderful about the old campus was that it was a tradition that when you're walking across campus, you speak to everybody. And it helped us become a family, I thought. And a number of years ago, I was here at one of these dinners like today and went out on the balcony to have a cigarette. And I was talking to a student. And I asked him, I said, I've noticed on campus nobody seems to be speaking to one another here. I said, and I told him about this tradition, and it's not done now. And I think that's a shame. I think that they're missing out. One other thing, I've lived here in Winston-Salem many years, and I went to a seminar out at Renolda House on Southern architecture and the South and all that, and happened to have the wonderful chance to sit beside Dr. Smiley. This was years after graduation. And one of the other things is years after graduation, these professors will call you by name when they see you. And I had the chance to tell him the same thing. Dr. Smiley, I cannot thank you enough. You taught me how to think. And it's very, very, very true.
I taught Dr. Smiley with a communist. Well, 7 years teaching us, but I didn't understand.
Did you say anything?
I'm going to say something.
Okay. One other activity that happened on the old campus, which was a craze across the country, were panty raids. Now, when I went to Wake as a freshman there, math was not my strongest suit, and I found myself in sort of a remedial college math class with a lot of football players. Let's see, and now I can't, who was the name of that professor that taught that class?
Square Root, was that his nickname?
What? I wasn't advanced enough to know that information.
Husband and wife, the wife was really strict on everybody.
That sounds like
And the husband, he won't come to me, but he was very generous to athletes.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Bob Carroll.
Pop Carroll.
Bob Carroll.
no. Anyway, he was from down east also. Well, anyway,
I think you're right.
the day after there was a panty raid at Wake Forest on the old campus, I just cut math that day.
Because you didn't have any underwear. That was it.
You know, when they had, when they're getting ready for the panty raid, Dr. Tripper called Bill Barnes in and said, Bill, you're respected around here by all these folks. Said, I need you to help me. He said, would you please try to encourage them not to have a panty raid? Well, you know Bill Barnes, he kind of slid aside. They still had the panty raid. He wasn't going to be part of turning it down.
Well, you may not know this, but you may have suspected, because I'm sure you were an active instigator. But all the gals in the dorms would run out and buy the frilliest, prettiest underwear they could find, simply so they wanted something amazing to donate to the college.
I was going to tell you about what Wake Forest meant to me.
Okay.
I came from a small town in Canton, North Carolina, up in the mountains. Very bashful, shy, and I only got to go to school because I got a scholarship. Otherwise, I'd have done like the rest of my family and worked in the paper mill there. And by coming to Wake Forest and learning how to get out of my backwardness and learning how to speak, I wouldn't even get in front of 2 or 3 people and speak, more or less in front of a whole group. But they'd get me up in front of the class and let me talk, and I'd have to nod and bright and lie and all that stuff. They got me out of doing some of that stuff. But at any rate, by being able to come to Wake Forest and to improve myself, and it being such a good college and small and everybody's so friendly, and that I was able to get an education. I was able to meet my wife without the education. I'd have never met her. I'd have never had the 3 kids, and when I've got 3 children, and I got a foster son. But none of that would ever happen in my life.
That's right, because Midge always liked classy men, and at least you ended up being somewhat classy.
Yes, she was about as backward as I was.
That's pretty nth degree stuff. Who's next?
Well, I have the mic, and they told my story. Told my story about the dance on the patio out there. And we were so excited, and we had our little Scarlet D's on. I was going to tell that story too. And we were so excited. So on the cover of Time, my daddy said, "If I see your face on the cover of a magazine or on TV, you are coming home." So he did not see my face.
Blacked it out.
I was there, but he did not see my face. Well, actually, he told me that after the dance on the patio. But I had forgotten all those things. Y'all, that's fun. We had fun.
We did. We had so much fun.
So much fun.
Let me pass the mic back to this row and see what somebody back here might remember. And state your name if you don't mind.
Oh, yes. I was a student after being in the Coast Guard in the 1950s. And I remember Stevens Bookstore, because that's where I could buy my books with a good price. And I remember the magnolia trees, because we didn't have magnolia trees where I grew up over in Iredell County. I remember the new campus as we moved here in my second year at Wake Forest after I got out of the Coast Guard. And the walkways were not paved yet. And I was in Dr. Smiley's classes several times. And they were just beginning to finish the campus, and Dr. Smiley said, "The builders should have waited until the students make the paths, and then they can pave them where the students
Brilliant.
are."
Brilliant.
Everybody had a laugh out of that. I was a veteran at Wake Forest, and so I missed a lot of the campus life, but was already married, and this boy right here came along pretty quickly too. So he brought me here today, and then he wound up going at Wake Forest too. Most of the waiters and waitresses were students, and I ate frequently off campus, and I missed a lot of the campus life with the students, but it was a good way to finish my military service and go back to a sort of younger life.
Yeah.
And so I grew a lot during those years.
Absolutely.
Then I entered 3 different seminaries, and I've been a pastor since 1957, starting while I was a student at Wake Forest here at Peace Haven Baptist Church. And so Wake Forest has been a great influence on our life, as others like Jack and Ruby Gentry up there, and others who were in the ministry already and a little bit older. A lot of us at that time were in the Korean War. And so we were coming late, but we had the GI Bill.
Right.
So that helped us.
Yeah, it would have. Another story about a young man at Wake who was in our class who wanted to be a minister, got a job at another small church, and he wanted so much to make a difference. And he had to lead his own singing because they didn't have a minister of music. And one of his favorite things was God of Our Fathers. Remember? Da 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 da, and it starts out in the hymn book with trumpets before each verse. And this guy would get up there and he would sing, "Trumpets before each verse." Da da. He also heard one time at First Baptist, the guy from Riverside in New York, whose name was Robert McCracken. came and spoke, and he was fabulous. And this young preacher thought, I love the way he rolls his R's. I'm going to start doing that. So when he would announce training union at his church, he would say, okay, boys and girls. But the best thing he ever did was to announce when he started a series of lessons on the Sermon on the Mount, stating that it was by far the compilation of Jesus' ministry. You can't make these things up. Who's got the mic back there?
Mary Lou Corbett. I was the first one on the old campus, and like I just did cover the ground. But I remember that I had Dr. Hubert Teat as my Latin teacher. I'd never taken Latin before, and I wanted to take it there, and that was a real treat.
He was, I was scared to death of him. That he was known as Old Thunder. I was scared of him. My sister majored in Latin under both Daddy and Dr. Petit and said he was the kindest, gentlest, best teacher ever. And when when the college moved, he retired. He did not move with the college. But for as many years as he had left, when Wake Forest would win a game, he would walk up there and ring the bell. Remember ringing the bell for our victories? Dr. Petit kept doing that as long as it was able. Who's next?
I'm Leon Corbett, and I'm a transfer too. I went to Davidson first and then came here so I could go to law school my senior year. So I just joined this class for 1 year, but I've tried to make up for it ever since. I've been married twice, both of them from the class of '59, both are here today.
Oh my goodness. I think you set a record.
I did. I'm sure that I've married more people in this class than anybody else. And I worked for Wake Forest for 34 years and retired as counsel for the university. Leon Gatlin, you remember him? He was a year ahead of us. He told me Billy Spee's stories. One of which is, what'll it be, Billy? Smoke or chew? I think I'll have a chew. Damn good decision, Billy. As he was walking across the campus. and he tripped and fell and said, get up, you old fool, before somebody sees you.
That was him.
So I feel like I learned a lot from this class.
We learn in more places than classrooms, don't we?
Absolutely.
Sometimes walking, and I remember Ed Chrisman and Ernie McKenzie, if any of you remember Ernie, never could remember anybody's name. So Ed Chrisman called everybody Ace. Everybody, hey Ace! And the other one, who did I just say? Ernie McKenzie called everybody Old Fell.
Yeah.
Remember that? Hey, I loved it. Loved them both. Who's next?
Well, I want to mention that I kept, now I'm torn it, scrapbooks, and I do have the special edition of the Old Gold and Black that talks about when Tribble was, and I just told him, when he was burned in effigy. And also they said after they quieted the guys down, somebody yelled panty raid, and they all ran over to Boswick, and there's a picture on the back side of that that shows the girls in Boswick being guarded by the local
Wow. That sounds like something Charlie Carpenter would do back before he got classy enough in their edge.
Were any of you there for that bonfire? Because I was.
Well, let me ask you something real quick. Is Bird here? Bird Tribble. She is here, but she's not in this room. I wonder what her take on that would all be. It'd be interesting to know.
Bird Tribble lives in Salem.
I saw her in the lunchroom, and I was hoping she'd be here. Maybe it's a good thing she's not. Somebody else back there?
Emery, a question. Yeah. Names from the past. There was a lady on the south end of campus that had a boarding house who provided meals.
Miss Jo.
Miss Jo.
Miss Jo's Cafeteria.
Does she have a last name?
Yes. Miss Jo
Williams.
Williams.
Do you remember what she charged for meals?
Probably almost nothing.
$5 a week.
Wow.
That was one meal a day.
Beautiful house down on the Durham Highway, kind of across from where the president's.
And if you worked there as a waiter, you could also live in the house and eat there. So it was the best job on the campus.
Of course.
Oh, she was a fabulous.
I think I paid $1 a day for 3 meals.
There you go.
I didn't live there, but I cleared tables and got my meals.
Right.
Freshman
You know,
year.
Miss Joe.
Miss
I had
Jo.
an uncle who lived there and same thing, you know.
We ate in the Colonial Club, and that was good food.
Was that Miss Stroud?
Ma Stroud.
Ma Stroud. Ma Stroud.
We being the athlete.
Okay, who's got the mic back there?
I think I remember the math teacher was Easley.
Easley was religion.
Oh, never mind. But the math teacher's wife also taught English at that child.
Yeah, she lived to be over 100. She lived to be over 100.
Was it
We're talking about Rainer.
Ivy Jennings was the chairman of the farm.
Rainer, wasn't she the?
Rainer. Buell-
That's it.
Yeah, Buell Rainer.
General Rainer and Professor Rainer.
Right,
That's in there somewhere.
Earlier.
That's
story.
right, that's right. Okay,
Barbie Durham, not unlike all of you, I took a lot away from this university. But from my freshman year, I took away an image. And in keeping with the penny rate discussion, as a brand new freshman, I just had to go participate in that penny rate. So I went to the dorm, and the windowsill was about this far above my head. And so I jumped up, grabbed it, and pulled myself up to find Lois Johnson standing in there. That sort of killed my ardor for penny rates. But that's the image I carry to this very day. Miss Johnson
I thought of Lois Johnson as being an old woman, and I was looking at the 59 Howler and saw that picture of her. She was an absolutely gorgeous woman. She was beautiful.
I was terrible.
Somebody else?
When I first got there, I found out where the shortest pool room was. But I will say this, my high school coach was named Ed Carpus. And on his tombstone, he died some years ago, and he made sure they put on it, I played for P-Head Walker. And it's on there right now.
Wow. Anybody else on the back row?
I am going to say that I am Trent Carpenter. I'm Charlie's son, and I've heard some stories today that I did not hear growing up.
Well, I'm going to bet that the same thing is true the other way around. That you've got some stories that he doesn't know anything about. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Charlie Duncan, and from Greenville, South Carolina. And hearing all these old stories just brings back lots of memories. You know, the old campus was special. And I'll never forget the dorm I lived in, looking out the window and watching the football players climb that ivy up the side of the building to break in to get the exams, the copies of the exams.
I know all about
You know what I'm
that.
talking about. I was talking to Charlie Carpenter earlier
I know
today.
all about that.
And he claims he was not one of those.
He makes a lot of claims, I think.
Why they blame that on the football players?
The thing I remember about Smiley was, one time we were in chapel, one of those compulsory chapels, and they just talk about don't walk on the grass, stay on the sidewalks. Chapel was over, Smiley walks out the front door, straight down the middle of the grass, all the way down to Renova Hall. So he defied almost everything that went on. And one of the things about Wake, I'll never forget is, y'all remember Jasper Memory?
Yeah.
Well, in my senior year, I had to fill some things, so I took statistics from Jack Memory along with half the football team. But he made everybody go around the room and tell us who they were and where they're from. I said, I'm Charlie Duncan from Raff, Virginia. Oh yeah, your daddy was on the football team. He played the trumpet in the band at college. He was a Golden Gloves champ in North Carolina. He knew everything about everybody in that class unless they were from Pennsylvania and a football player. So just that whole family, that whole camaraderie that just permeated the whole campus from old to new.
How many of you knew Jasper Memory? Does this sound familiar? Give me some men who are stout-hearted men. That was his favorite song. And he would lead everybody who was available to sing that song.
Another thing about memories is he had a son named Jasper too.
Right.
And he was
Jackie.
a fraternity brother. And
He was
would
in
sit-
school with us, with
Yeah.
Murray and
He
me.
would sit in the chair down in the chapter room, and people would ask him math questions. And he would sit there and work out the most complicated math questions out of his head. He went on to become a professor, I think, at Chapel Hill.
I knew Jackie Memory better than you did.
I'm sure you did.
We started first grade together. By the time I was a freshman at Wake Forest, he was about to get his doctorate from North Carolina State in physics. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore.
Jackie's not.
He ended up being a vice president of the university system.
Right.
No, vice president for research.
I didn't know that.
Somebody else?
I wanted to share a Jasper memory story.
Oh, yes, I saw you had your eye winking.
I came into Dr. Memory's class late one day and was afraid that he had not given me credit. You remember he looked down at his grade book and didn't even look up while he was checking the roll. And I went up to his desk and I said, Dr. Memory, I was a little late and wanted to make sure that I got, had me checked in. He said, Mr. Preston, do you have any friends in this class? I said, I hope so. He said, well, tell them not to answer the roll for you anymore.
Go ahead.
One more story. Talk about all the problems with dancing. When I was a freshman, I belonged to the dance band called the Southerners of Wake Forest. And as a freshman, the old campus, we played every Friday and Saturday night all over the state of North Carolina. We played college dances, junior, senior proms, and those kinds of things. So it's interesting with the history at Wake about anti-dancing. We had a really good big band. And that big band was wiped out in 6 months my sophomore year when rock and roll took over. And then I became the social director for the fraternity, so it was now my job to hire all the rock and roll bands when I couldn't stand them because they wiped out my big band.
Oh, the irony of life. Somebody else? Let me tell you another quick story about my dad, because this made an impression on me that has been lifelong. We had up on the church, for the Baptist church on the campus, every Christmas Eve, of course, they had the Christmas story, and they had the little kids with the cardboard and the little cotton balls all over and being the sheep running down the aisle, and they had the angels, and they had all this stuff. And afterwards, on the way home, and I was maybe 5 or 6, I said, Daddy, do you think that the shepherds really heard angels singing? Or do you think they were so happy about Jesus being born that they thought they heard angels singing? This is all he said. He turned around, looked at me, and said, never stop asking questions. What a brilliant answer to a child. And that, I question everything. I'm an analyzer, I always have been, and it all goes back to that very simple story. Never stop asking questions. And that's also something that I'm going to guess that Wake Forest University taught every one of you. By proxy, if you were a spouse, or in person, if you were actually there, in those high walls. And I'll always talk about the old campus because I grew up there. I lived there from the time I was 2 until we moved to Winston-Salem, and knew all the faculty members, the Herrings. Remember the Herrings? So many ministerial students who had no place to stay because the dorms were full would knock on the door. And even though Mrs. Herring had promised her own 4 that they could have their own rooms, she would say, come on in. And one of them was Gene Owens in Charlotte, who became the pastor of one of the largest Baptist churches there, and credited Mrs. Herring with the fact that he was able to go to Wake.
Wow.
Those stories are legion. Nancy.
Gene Owens was a really good friend of mine. I go to Myers
Wait a
Park
minute, here,
Baptist
come to the
Church.
mic.
I go to Myers Park Baptist Church in Charlotte, and Gene was our senior minister. And he was wonderful. He was eloquent, he was hilarious, and he was very kind. He was a great guy, one of the great guys. I wanted to tell you too a couple of other funny stories I thought about while I was listening to you tell funny stories. I have a friend named Bill Pierce. Do any of you remember him?
Yeah.
He was a
Remember Bill?
wonderful singer at
Yes.
Wake Forest. Well, he sings in our choir, and he's a good friend. And he told me that he lived with the I. Beverly Lake family when he was at Wake Forest. And when he went to his first dance and wore his first tuxedo, he came downstairs and Mrs. Lake said to him, "Oh, Bill, you just look wonderful." And she said, "Can I help you do anything?" And he said, "Well, I did my tie all right, but I'm having trouble with my concubine."
Thank you for that. What a great story.
I've heard the men talking about their sports stories. And it reminded me of when I was a majorette at Wake Forest. I was an acrobat, and so was Phyllis Hedrick. And so we did rocket type dances that we had a string of majorettes, and we did rocket type dances. And Caparella, our band director, wanted Phyllis and me to do some stunts at halftime, but we had to get permission from Lois Johnson, who was Dean of Women. So we went and asked her if we, or somebody did, we didn't, but somebody went and asked her if we could do that, and she said, "Heavens, no. They're conspicuous enough as they are." And about 6 months later, they appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show in New York City. So it was, I guess maybe it was a one-upmanship for Lois Johnson.
Am I right in thinking that the one that really set the tone for Wake Forest majorettes and all over the country was Sarah Page Jackson Lewis?
She was.
She could strut with that.
Yeah,
with that.
and she was a tall redhead.
Yes, yes.
She lives in Charlotte too.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Thought she was just amazing. And she told me, she said, Jack and I were in the same class and we were just beginning to fall in love, and we would pass notes back and forth in Greek class. And she said, "I know Dr. Art saw us, but he loved us both and he never said a word. He let us keep passing those notes back."
I know you're proud of him.
What a story. Jack was an All-American football player. So very interesting that the great majorette and the All-American football player wound up married.
Yeah, it is.
Of course, they wound up divorced.
Right, yeah.
That happens.
When he said that, I saw you, Charlie, put your arm around Midge. Are you worried about something about her?
We don't have it a couple more years together.
Oh dear. Oh well, you know.
We'll get together afterwards. When Frank and I were married, we were celebrating our 25th wedding anniversary, and we were at a church function called Circle 8, and it was a couples group that just got together for fun and mischief, and he gave me a bracelet for our 25th wedding anniversary, and he said, "Well, Nancy, I promised you 25 years." And he said, "I guess I'm a free agent now." And I said, "Well, Frank, you promised me 25 good years, and you've got 23 more to go."
Anything?
I want Frances to have her chance.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, y'all have really entertained me and reminded me of such wonderful things. I just want to say that I am so happy and so very happy that I got that scholarship to Wake Forest and was there my freshman year with all of y'all. And you just made me feel so good today. It's been a long time since I've been here. But look at this lovely, beautiful place. You know, it's just has changed a great deal since those sticks and that red clay when we first came over. But I've been back to Old Wake Forest too, and it is still so beautiful. And just makes you
I don't mean to interrupt.
heart
Go ahead.
sing.
It does. Did President Truman break ground
Here.
here for the new campus? Okay. Pro Humanitas.
1949.
Broke ground.
Broke ground. It took them a while. It took them a while to get these buildings up out of the soil.
Do you remember the rain that we had the first week?
The inside of the chapel walls were just
The
dripping.
dorms were dripping. We called ours the Titanic.
Didn't half of the girls, one of the dorms had to be vacated, it was so wet.
Yeah, it was really wet.
Somebody else?
I have one thing I want to say is that if I were to identify myself, I would say that I was a wife, that I was a teacher, and that I went to Wake Forest. Going to Wake Forest is something I'm very proud of. I'm very proud to say that I'm a deacon. I feel so sorry for my friends who went to Carolina, East Carolina, Duke State. They think there's something, and they just don't understand. And I am proud to be here.
One time, there was an article in the Charlotte Observer about the rivalry between Carolina and Wake Forest. And the article said that Carolina is extremely impressed with themselves because they have thousands of times more graduates than Wake Forest does. And my husband, George Austin, said the only thing that North Carolina has more of than Carolina graduates is roaches.
You know that State and Carolina, they have more students on campus than Wake Forest has total.
Not since when was it, Murray? 1838 or something like that? When Wake was founded?
34.
34?
Yeah.
They can't possibly have currently more than after, what, 100?
Yeah, well, those people aren't all living.
He said living.
Living.
Oh,
There is
living.
more people,
Forgot, I didn't
more
hear the
people
living
there
part.
than we've got total on our.
Well, I'd stack the characters up on any scales in the world, and I don't mean that irreverently. Somebody else, anything else about something that struck? Microphone back here to Leon, the guy with 2 wives in the room.
Since you all have mentioned the name so many times, I want to remind you that some years ago, the fire department said, you got to name that street behind the girls' dorm. We always need a place to be able to tell the trucks where to go. So you got to name that street. So before you leave, you can go and stroll down Jasper Memory Lane.
Are you kidding?
No. Yeah, it's true.
There's also Allen Easley Street you can go down.
How about that? Wow. Somebody else?
Mary Ann and I are a 5-generation Wake Forest family.
I wonder if there are any more.
Wow.
Any with 6? I bet not.
Yeah, I'm 3 and getting ready to 4.
Wow. Anybody else?
It's Mike.
Right back behind you.
There we go.
I got a couple of things about something happened between a student and a professor, and I'm not going to give any names because I want to protect the guilty. We were taking biology, and this boy is a friend of mine, and we got on the first test, the professor gave him an 80, marked him down 20 points. Well, the student kept arguing with the professor in the lab. So one day the professor said, I want you to come in my office in the morning, see if we can settle this thing. So I saw the boy later on that morning in the hall, and I said, did you get your grade restored to 100? He said, no, the professor told me if I brought it up anymore, he's going to mark me down 20 more points. And the other one was Professor Clont taught English history. And I was taking the course, and this same boy said to me, he said, now, he gives pop quizzes. But the thing to do is stand outside the class until he goes in. And says if he does certain things, he's not going to give the pop quiz. I said, well, how do you know that's true? He said, I've just observed it. And I said, well, what are you going to do if you get in the class and he gives us quiz, the test, or the question, and you don't know the answer. Because Professor Clont said if you didn't show up in class, he wouldn't count it against you. And I never, so one day Dr. Clont came in and he didn't do the usual little ceremony he did. And this boy said, well, it'll be all right to go in because he's not going to give the test or the question. So we go in and he did give the question. Fortunately, I happen to know the answer. And I told that boy later on, I said, I'm going to quit following your advice. He's going to get me in trouble.
I remember, who was the other history professor? Turtle Jones.
Pop Jones, we called him. He gave a pop every
Bert
day.
Yearns was a history professor.
Yeah.
Okay, but so was
Turtle and Pop, maybe, I think the same ones.
Yeah.
And I had, similar to his experience on, with Pop Jones, I had his class second hour, our first year. And so I'd be walking up toward the class and I saw a friend that had been in the first class. And I would say, did he give a pop today? Yeah. What was the general subject? He'd tell me. And after several days, this real stick in the mud who was in the class jumped all over me and said, you were cheating. And I went to Professor Jones and I said, well, here's exactly what happened. Now you tell me. He said, that's the reason you make such good grades. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
I was going to say, here is a question of character here. Suppose this guy had given you all the wrong answers and you'd gotten everything wrong. Would you then have thought maybe it was cheating?
Well, I hadn't thought about it like that. But he didn't give me the answers. He just told me
just told you what the general questions were.
But to answer that question for you, he would have made some good excuse about making all those bad answers and punish the guy to get into him.
Interesting. The other guy didn't know anything. He's the one that should have been downgraded.
ROTC. And every time they had a quiz, we were lined up in straight lines. And every other one got, that one got one quiz, that one got another, right? And they'll skip.
Yeah.
So we stand outside, take the smart boards and they'll tell me over there and you let us know if you got the good answer. So they'd either say, so we'd go in and all of us go in and sit down in the opposite row. And one day he said, I'm going to change. And you never seen so many guys getting up switching seats.
It just amazes me that we graduated such smart, intelligent.
It is sort of.
Who are in charge of running
Exactly.
cities, states, country.
You got to remember that it takes smartness to do things.
That's exactly right.
And 4 years was a standard.
That's right, except for Bill Shepard. Ed, you probably know as much about Wake as anybody. Are there some funny things that have happened at the Birthplace Society because of experiences with Wake that you could tell us about?
I probably can't repeat some of them that I've heard. I have heard most of the stories that's been in here today many times, and some of them, some new ones added on today, but it's been really interesting.
Do you have any yourself that have not been told?
I don't think so. No, I probably could think of a few. I want you to finish telling the story you started at the beginning about the tablecloth and why they signed their names on it.
Okay, it's a little bit longer than that. My dad taught Greek, and he knew he had to sell his subject. The English department did not. There were certain things that were required, but he knew that he had to sell his subject. So when I was a freshman in high school, I went up on the campus and learned how to type. And from then on, every August, I typed letters, one after another, from my dad. Every incoming freshman, whether you remember it or not, you got a letter from him, typed by me. And this is what the letter said. Dear Mary Martha, Glad you're coming to Wake Forest. Hope you'll take my course. Whether you do or whether you don't, I just want you to know how glad we are that you chose Wake Forest. If you have any problem getting the classes you need on registration day, come find me in the gym on registration day and I'll go with you to make certain that you get every one of those classes on your list. A new campus can be an intimidating place. My wife and daughters and I have lived here for years and would love to show you around. If you get hungry for some of Mama's cooking, my wife can always put another cup of water in the soup. And if you just want somebody to talk to, my door is always open. And he ended every letter by saying, I am so glad you're coming to Wake Forest. Registration day is a big day for both of us. And when registration day was over and all those class rolls were filled, my dad's classes were jam-packed with students, spilling out into the hallways before there were fire coats, lined up all the way around the walls, because the professor knew what to sell to. He knew what those students needed was a caring place away from home, because most of them had never left home before. And he knew that, and that's what he sold to, and that is what they bought. And our house was always filled with students. And on Sundays, we'd come home from church with 4 or 5 different students who had never eaten with us before. And at the end of the meal, when Mother would give out her wonderful homemade dessert, she would also give every student a pencil with a very dull point, and she would say, sign your name to our tablecloth. And sometime this next week, I will take my white embroidery thread and I will embroider your name on our cloth. And then my dad would look each student in the eye and he would say, we want your name on the cloth. Because the day is going to come when we will be able to say that you had dinner with us when you were just a student. Names on that tablecloth: Brian Piccolo, P. Ed Walker, some of the people that you mentioned. A student that I just thought was the cutest thing I had ever seen, who was a basketball player named, what was his name? Olin Broadway.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah, and he's a good friend now. He lives in Charlotte. And I look at those names. Dickie Henry. There was another football player not a football player, Arnold Palmer. Yeah. Arnold Palmer's name is on that cloth. And I find myself wondering how many of those students moved toward authenticity and took plunges because an old classics professor thought they had it in them. And I'm saying to you this afternoon, if he could do it, so can you. If you understand what's important, what to sell to, and how to make a difference, you can have a figurative tablecloth, a real one, or whatever you want to do. It all depends on the way you see the need of another human being and fill it in a way that makes a difference in the way that student begins to view life from then on. Anybody else? Okay, is there a mic floating around somewhere back there?
Well, here's one that can go back there.
Oh, Nancy. I forgot to tell you that the person who brought me here today is my daughter, Susan Zane. She was my driver.
Yay, daughter.
Yes, and my best friend. She's wonderful, and I'm proud of her. In class of 83, she graduated from Wake Forest. And the only child I had that graduated from Wake Forest. I want to tell you another funny story about Gene Owens.
Okay.
Minister you mentioned. We used to have a feature in our church that after we had the sermon, we would meet in the Great Hall and have talk back, where we got to talk back.
I always loved that.
Yeah. And a young man got up one day and said, Dr. Owens, what is your church's view on the drinking of alcohol? And Gene Owens said, it's not required.
Another well-known preacher that went to Wake Forest on the eve of New Year's said, I know we're making resolutions, and I understand that, and I know that probably many of you are going to make the thing to give up, maybe to give up alcohol. And he said, that is a very worthy thing, and if you decide to do it, just bring it by my house.
I had one more funny story about the bookstore. My career has had all the layers of a Russian nesting doll. I've done lots of things, but my favorite thing was having a bookstore for about 15 years. And the day we opened the bookstore, one of the men from our church, who was an attorney, came in the store and he said, I'm looking for a book with a lot of sex and violence. So we gave him a copy of the Bible.
It's like a soap opera anyway.
I'm here with my dad as well. And a lot of you graduated, of course, in 1959, and you're on the other end from what I was when I first came to Wake Forest. Wake Forest, at that time, 1958, I think, experimented with a kindergarten. I was a member of that class in 1958. Winston-Salem Forsyth County Schools did not have kindergarten then, so I was very lucky to be able to go to the kindergarten here at Wake Forest. At the time, it was in the basement of Wake Chapel. And we had a little graduation in the little chapel underneath the big chapel. And it was so neat because my dad was here in school at the time, excuse me. And he would get through with his 11 o'clock class at the kindergarten, let out at noon, and he would pick me up. And we'd go over to friends of his who lived in the new student apartments then and have lunch. So I got to have lunch with my dad through kindergarten before I went to first grade in the public schools. But I didn't know how many of you knew there was a kindergarten here then. So Wake Forest was working both ends when they young and when they got a little older.
And one thing with the young, you find my husband-in-law, very romantic person. Very Russian, stuff like that. Very romantic person. And one day we went to the old campus, and I was so excited. I love that campus, so beautiful. So Frank and I go to the old campus, I'm so excited. And we park and we go up and we start walking through the campus. I said, let's go to the magnolia trees. Because, you know, we used to know where they were. He said, heck no, I'm going to Shorty's.
Difference in ideology.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Oh, excuse me.
Anybody else?
I want to say one thing too. I want y'all to know that my daughter brought me today. Unfortunately, she didn't follow me to Wake Forest. She's a Carolina graduate.
Oh.
But I am so pleased she's here.
Don't tell her about today.
Sit right back on the back row.
Anybody else?
I have to say it's been inspiring to be here, and thank you so much. Y'all have all welcomed me, even though I have gone to the wrong school, and I really appreciate it. And I hope to see all of y'all back in 5 years.
Absolutely. Now, Murray, you were chairman of the trustees. You've had a lot of involvement with Wake over the years.
Yes, I was chair of the board. Nathan asked at a meeting of general alumni the other day, well, it was a trustee meeting, included a lot of people who are life trustees or retired like me. He said, now, what do you people remember about your time as a member of the Board of Trustees? And my story was, and this is true, I spent the Christmas holidays 2004 worrying Nathan Hatch to death on the telephone to convince him not to drop out as a candidate for president of Wake Forest.
Oh my goodness.
Because at Notre Dame, he was really in charge. You know, a priest is the president. And they had fired a football coach and had a mess going on. And he couldn't, he said, I just can't leave. I can't come down there. So I didn't let him have a full day's rest. And we finally got him, he and his wife down here, and they all loved it, and here we are. So that was my most important contribution to Wake Forest.
Good job, good job.
On behalf of that, and your service to Wake Forest, and you're getting us the president that you did, I would like to present to you today's symbol of authenticity. Take wherever you go for the rest of the day. It is yours.
I can't tell you how honored I am. Jimmy DeVos was actually a friend of mine, so I bear it with double pride.
Absolutely, absolutely. Anytime I see you the rest of this weekend, I want to see that in your hand because it means a lot.
I'm not sure they let me take it into the football game.
They used to let people take those in because they were waved around.
I know, but that was in the day before super security.
Oh, you might hit somebody with that.
Right.
That would be something, wouldn't it? We're free to stay as long as anybody wants to. Just chat, to get in groups, or there's something else going on.
Yeah, I'll just quick.
Thank you, darling.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Mika. I'm the Assistant Director of Development for the ZSR Library, and we just want to say thank you all for coming and for being in Special Collections.
Our ears are really old.
I'm sorry. My name is Mika, and I work with CSR as their Assistant Director of Development, and we just wanted to say thanks to all of you for coming and for being with us and for sharing your stories. Because right now you're in the Special Collections and Archives classroom, and what we are all about is the history and preserving and keeping the history of Wake Forest, just like we do with the Birthplace Museum, and so it's wonderful to have these stories. I just real quickly, so that you know, there is some food outside that you're welcome to get, and then there's also going to be a reception going on from 3 to 4:30 in the reading room, and Rebecca's going to tell you a little bit more about that in a minute, but you're very welcome to come. We'd love to have you join us. Hello, my name is Rebecca May. I'm the Public Services Archivist here in Special Collections. I really enjoyed your story. Barry Davis here has been recording you. So this is kind of a large oral history, video history of the class of '59. Some of you, I heard, wrote down answers to your questions. We would love to have those if you're willing to give those up. We have the questions here. You're also welcome to submit written memories to be added to the university archives. And if anyone is interested in doing an oral history today, we can set that up with a recording. I know you have a lot of other things going on, so if you're not interested in doing that, but you do want to share your memories, I've got sheets over here with information on how to do that. I believe you also got that in the mail. Yes?
Can I just make one comment? A couple of you mentioned Di Beverly Lake. He was really a very special friend and fraternity brother, Joe and myself. I don't know if you're aware, but in the last week or so, he passed away. And I didn't know that. I was talking to John, the 70th anniversary graduate that was introduced earlier. Can't remember his last name, but just thought you'd like to know if you did.
Sorry to hear that. A few things, as Mika was saying, there's refreshments. Through this door here, or outside through the door, is the Special Collections and Archives reading room. We have an exhibit set up for the class of 1959 that includes your Howler yearbooks, the handbooks, both men's and women's government association handbooks from the 50s when you were here, the student magazine, directories of faculty and student, and other things from your years at Wake Forest. So please feel free to go in there. And I did want to mention, from all of your stories, so many names were mentioned that are held in the university archives. Dr. Smiley's papers are here, and a donation has been given to digitize those and get them online. It sounds like all of you have a very fond memory of him. Dr. Robach, Dr. Poteet, Ed Chrisman, Joe Klontz, all of those names are names that are held in the university archives. So if you're willing to give your memories, you would be included with a lot of the people that you hold dear to Wake Forest. And it's very important that your memories are preserved as well. So thank you all for coming. I really enjoyed this. And please feel free to make yourselves at home next door.
Thank you very much.